The idea for Nitanix actually spawned from Google. The chief architect of the Google distributed file system in the first few missions is one of the founders of Nitanix. So obviously made a ton of money at Google, and what do we do with this money? How can I make more money? And basically use that same concept, but bringing it to the masses. And how do you do that, right? The difference between you guys and Google is you don't have thousands of developers running around your offices to make the apps work on this distributed file system. So essentially the hypervisor is how we do that. The workload to put on Nitanix must be virtualized, so that's a prerequisite. And we'll get into some of the other items. But I wanted to spark off with that, so some of the technologies that we're leveraging, the Cassandra ring, MapReduce, things like that you'll see in the Google distributed file system. That's what we've done in a proprietary Nitanix distributed file system. Again, which we'll get into later. But just to kind of take off what Sasha had talked about, and it seems like everyone's been talking about at some point in the presentation. So very good, and we'll hammer through this and get back on track. So essentially this is what we call a data center 1.0. So local storage, right, x86 servers. And this is kind of when IT was making an impact in the business, whether it was recognized or not. Still today is to be, each company is different, but essentially now we go into data center 2.0, and this is when the SAN was born, three-tiered architecture, so storage area network. Now you guys all remember these I love VMware bumper stickers, so I'm sure everyone in the room has had one at some point. No? Well, this guy, we'll get into Microsoft, don't worry. So virtualization has been born now, and this really changed the way that data centers have been for years, right? So in years to come. So we talk about 3.5, so we're going to go mid-level here and build this out. So there you go, man. Hyper-V. It's just virtualization. It's not VMware, right? So you have Zen Server, you have Hyper-V, you have other hypervisors coming into the ranks here. And one of the important parts here that we always hone in on is, you'll see people put band-aids on this three-tiered architecture. That's their answer. Hey, let's add more flash, 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 flash. And, that sounds cool, right? Not everyone needs a Ferrari, though, right? So not everyone can afford one. Not everyone can afford one. Yeah. We don't all work for VMware. So we look at flash as a band-aid, and it's funny. You'll see later on in the presentation that we actually have an all-flash unit. And when we first came out, I'm like, well, what the hell are we doing? We kind of make fun of those guys for saying flash. And it was really to get into the market space. It does handle certain workloads that our other series can't. But essentially it was more of a, let's get invited to this dance, because companies now have a flash strategy. CIOs are talking about, what's your flash strategy? So we saw the violins of the world out there kind of getting invited to this dance that we weren't. So that's a quick tidbit for me when I'm like, why the hell are we doing this? And it was more of a business reason for more opportunities. And our engineers will argue with you why you don't need it. But hey, if you got the money, then by all means we'll take it. So this is kind of what we're looking at, three-tiered architecture with flash. The problem is very complex to manage. When you have to scale out, I use VDI as an example, as the worldwide VDI guy for Nitanix, bless you. So when you start off like VMware was, 100 seats, 150 seats, you're dipping your toe in from a virtual desktop perspective. Well, what architecture do you buy to support that? You buy a SAN for maybe 200, 300 users, we'll say. You put 100 test users on there, everyone's super happy. Now you put the other 200 on, so instead of 100 happy users, you got 300 very pissed off users now because they're sharing that same resource. Blender effect. I'll just summarize this slide very quickly. Blender effect, and you'll see us pick on vBlock a little bit in this presentation because that's the converged, right? We look at that as a converged SKU, which is done well, right? You get one 1-800 number. some positives to it, but ultimately it's still the same three-tiered architecture. We'll talk about the physics of that in a bit here. So this is the Nitanix way. You could scale out. Basically, you'll hear me reference VDI a lot just because of my job, but essentially any virtual workload you could put on a Nitanix. We have very large SQL deployments, very large VDI deployments. Really VDI, when you think about that kind of use case, that's the biggest bear from an infrastructure perspective, right? Very I/O intensive, etc. From a performance side of things. So the fact that we did well, and that's kind of where we got our start at VMworld 2013, where we won Best of Show there, and it's kind of just never looked back from there. Because people say, hey, if you could tackle this workload, that's very volatile, right? You know, you send some stupid video out on YouTube, everyone's looking at it on a virtual desktop, you're wondering what the hell's going on. Server workloads are very, very predictable, right? So, you know everyone's going to log off and then everyone's going to log back in, so you can kind of predict that type of workload where VDI is not. So that gave us a lot of street cred, so to speak. Yeah, got to go to my Nitanix slang here. So, so here, we just take all this complexity out, and our distributed file system, so we're compute, storage, and it's connected via distributed file system. There's a virtual controller on each node, and this is what gives the illusion of a SAN, hence eliminating the need for it. So somebody mentioned this earlier, I forget who, but it's all about the software. We're commodity hardware, it doesn't matter. You'll see we do an OEM with Dell, and that does not matter. Yeah, Mr. Microsoft, yeah, we got it. So all about the software, man. And then the scalability factor too. You could start with 3 nodes, so not even a full block. And we'll see that in a second here. And DFS. So let's talk about the scale out. So I look at it as just-in-time infrastructure. We're all familiar with the term just-in-time. So just-in-time infrastructure, whenever you're ready to add on users, when you make acquisitions, when you're rolling out to branch offices, this is what we mean by scale out. And it's the only limitation is the hypervisor. And on KVM, we have 2,300 node clusters out there. And that's because it's KVM, there's no limitation on the hypervisor. I think today the limitation is at 32 nodes, but in the next release for the hypervisors out there, like VMware and Hyper-V, it'll be around 64. If you're doing anywhere near that, I'd love to talk to you, but I think we're good. Yeah. So from a converged perspective, I mentioned converged SKU. This is putting all the data on the same bus. So you just flat out cannot beat physics when you have to travel back and forth on the 3-tiered architecture. When you have that travel time, that's what creates latency, that's what gives the end user that bad experience. And that's really what we're focused on here in the room, everyone. Inmates run the asylum. If users are unhappy, then we're all in trouble. So software defined, this is something where everything we do, all the intelligence is in the software. I've been in Nitanix for 2.5 years, had the privilege of working there for 2.5 years now, and I've watched us go from 1 unit to, I can't even tell you all the different flavors now. It's a hell of a lot, I'll tell you that much. And from a software perspective, we didn't have all the enterprise capabilities in the beginning, and we're able to update this in the software. Customers have driven us to develop a lot of different items, which we'd all expect in an enterprise infrastructure, like compression, dedupe, and we'll get into some of the features later. But think of the software-defined component as a Tesla. You bought a Tesla 2 years ago. That car is better today than when it was when you bought it 2 years ago because of the software enhancements, yep. Right? So when we come out with new releases, we're getting more capacity. We've been on 3 different hardware platforms since I've been around, Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, and now Haswell. So, you'll hear us say the hardware doesn't matter, as we'll leverage the latest and greatest hardware, and you could roll those out in the same cluster, all the different hardware features, right? All the different hardware platforms, rather. So that's something that, I've seen customers in Los Angeles, Farmers Insurance Group Credit Union, they have a Sandy Bridge, an Ivy Bridge, and a Haswell, and they just get better and better. We'll leverage that hardware when it comes out. So What happens when you do a three-tiered architecture? You have to buy all that up front. You just bought it, now Haswell's out, you kind of lost, timing sucked. But with us, just pay as you grow. Go one node at a time if you want to go that small. So real quick, local SSDs. So we have SSDs and SATA drives, so we're trying to strike a balance between cost and performance. I mentioned flash, you can throw it on there, but now how much is your virtual desktop? It comes down to a cost perspective, so we try to strike that balance there, where we have auto tiering. All the hot data will sit on the SSDs, and the cold data will move down to the HDDs. And then hybrid computing, so we started off with just VMware from a hypervisor perspective. Now we ship with KVM on it, and we have a tool called Foundation where you basically leverage whatever hypervisor you have. We're not in the OEM business. I don't believe we're going to do that because most people have their buying engine already from a hypervisor. You have a VMware ELA, a Microsoft ELA already. We allow you to choose and put on whatever you want from a hypervisor perspective. Terminology, so a block, this is a block here. It's a 2U appliance. And then these are nodes, so there's 4 nodes that'll go into this block. Again, you could start with 3. Node N just references infinite, right? Infinite scale out. We have not reached our limitation yet on the testing we've done. And then that's what forms a cluster, a group of nodes. So you need at least 3 to form a cluster. That's not a Nitanix thing where we're trying to make you buy 3. But once you buy 3 to start, you could just buy 1 at a time after that. So each node has compute, storage, the software controller, and the hypervisor on it. Cluster, as I said, a group of nodes. We'll go through that. I think it's just a video, so it kind of goes through the hardware. Nothing fancy, disk in the front, servers in the back, pull it out, and you'll see a little bit of that here. So the chassis just has power and cooling. There's nothing to it, really. And then as you populate and you're adding, it just stripes the data across all the different nodes. So as you're adding, you're getting compute and storage at the same time. The fact that we roll out like this, one of the things that we came out with, I believe we're still the only folks in the industry that do this, but we sell compute and storage on a per user basis for VDI. So you have to start off with 150 users minimum, and then after that you buy it in 10 packs. So we're basically saying think of compute and storage as you would from a consumer perspective on a per user basis. So we again start off 150 and then 10 packs thereafter. And it's called an assurance program because if we're going to guarantee X amount of IOPS, X amount of compute, X amount of memory, etc. So if we don't meet that, all we have to do is add another node. So it's very easy for us to do this in the industry and have that kind of rubber stamp, if you will. And we talk about the linear scale out. So if you fit 100 users per node, when you add another node, you're going to get another 100 users on that. So this is what we talk about. This is what we mean when we talk about linear scale out. I think it's very applicable from a VDI perspective because it's all about the sizing in VDI. Not all about, but a lot of it is. That's half the battle once you've accomplished the sizing perspective. So we'll talk about the communication. It's just 10 gig top of rack switch. This is just like Sasha's presentation. It's nothing fancy here. SFP or optical transceivers, and this is the communication. There's no backplane. As I said, the hardware is just dummy hardware. I talked about the different Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, and Haswell, but we've also been, it's Super Microbox, right, today. It was another company, now the name escapes me, of course, because I wanted to bring it up, but yes, Quanta. So we went to Quanta for like 2 months, and then we went back to Supermicro. I had no idea why. It didn't matter. It was just more of a business decision, I think. Maybe it was a leverage. Hey, Supermicro, we really don't care about the hardware, so probably negotiated a better deal. And we'll talk a little bit about the Dell.
You showed them that you can go to Quanta, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So that was just spoke to the software, you know.
Like in theory, we could.
Yeah. Right. So this. There we go. So, VC, as I said, we were going to pick on VC a little bit, but this is the exact amount of storage and compute and everything. We actually have a little bit more storage usable here and a little bit more RAM, but just to show the difference, as rack space matters to a lot of folks now, especially as you put your data out in these data centers like I don't know the ones here. We always just say Switch in the U.S., the Vegas data center, but you pay for the space, right? You pay for the power, etc. So
Pay per U.
huh?
Some places they pay per U.
Yeah. True.
Pew. U.
So this is more of how much is involved when you do a three-tiered architecture. 5 pages, not a very simple component. So for us, we're 1 1/4 page of a BOM. So it's again, it's just that simple. So the other piece is the management. When I talk to a lot of customers, and I worked in the Los Angeles area for a while with Nitanix, and it's the simplicity, the scalability that people go with us. You'll hear we're not a cheap solution. That's not what we're going for. We're going for the simplicity and the scalability components, which is very important to people. You don't have to be, as we're illustrating here, so that was 5 different consoles to manage a VCE environment, and for us, it's 2, and essentially it's really can just be 1, 2. You don't have to be a SAN expert to run a Nitanix box. You don't have to be a Nitanix expert to run a Nitanix box. You will use your hypervisor to look at it, to manage it. You could, whether it's System Center or vCenter. However you do it today, that's all you have to do when you go with Nitanix. And this is our GUI. I don't want to diminish what it provides. It provides a hell of a lot of data in there. It's HTML5. Rick hit on that earlier today, so download it anywhere, manage it from anywhere. One of the other things I wanted to bring up here is we have phone home capabilities, so if something happens, we get an error alert, whatever it may be, we'll call, make sure, hey, you didn't unplug anything, do something stupid, no, need a new disk, boom, we'll ship that out. That stuff happens in any type of hardware environment, so this is something where we're proactive to it. You'll hear our CEO a lot talk about we're selling an experience, not an appliance. And that speaks to the support level, where Net Promoter Score, I never really knew what it was before I joined Nitanix. Ours is an 88, and this is basically a customer satisfaction. To put that into perspective, Apple, which is known as a good customer service, they're in the 60s. VMware, I believe, is in the 40s. So that's something that our company takes a lot of pride in selling an experience. And where we are as a company, too, it's in social media now. If people have a bad experience, everybody knows about it, right? So we try to be on top of that as much as we can. So coming off the heels of Synergy, I thought I'd throw up this Citrix validated solution, because it was actually the Asia market that helped us achieve this last year. It was the folks out of China offices for Citrix and for Nitanix that started this Citrix validated solution. Because Citrix looks at us, and you hear the word complexity a lot when people are rolling out Citrix. That's something that they're constantly battling. We reduce the complexity from a infrastructure side, which allows them to get better time to value and use things like share file and mobile device management, etc. Don't worry about that. Just look at the infrastructure as a commodity. The end user doesn't see that. The end user does see other items within VDI, like share file and MDM, things like that. So that's what drives the time to value, which gets these projects off the ground and moving, and actually impacting the business, as Rick elaborated on earlier. So these are the only other ones that are Citrix validated solution. And when I first heard it, I just thought it was a me too, like Citrix ready, yeah, thanks for the stamp, everyone gets it as long as you have a pulse. But this is actually something where, if you look, Cisco is in each one of these. We're the only hyper-converged platform that is Citrix validated solution. So I think it's very important, and coming out of Synergy, we won Best of Show, and it was interesting because we don't support Zen server today. So to win at their show and not even support their hypervisor, I think we have awesome technology. I expect to win everywhere I go, but I was definitely surprised, pleasantly surprised. It was definitely a good honor to walk out of there. So I just thought I'd reference this Citrix validated design here. And this is comparable, right? So rack space, look at that, 34 versus 7. The power and cooling that we talked about. So these are all equivalents of each ones that we're up against in the CVS space. So I'll just let people eat in the numbers for a moment. So you got B-blocks, you'll hear me talk about complex pods. Those things are just nothing more than buying NetApp, buying Cisco, buying the hypervisor, and putting it together yourself. It's good they test and do all that stuff, but think of the time. We ship it, you're up and running in a half a day, you'll get an engineer to validate that. I've seen it, so it's not just a dumb sales guy throwing out these terms and numbers. So the visual comparison of what we just looked at, that's why I don't even bother to read all those numbers, because that pretty much says it all right there. So, and I talked about the enterprise features. So the good part of being software defined is we're going to come out with more and more and more as our customers are asking us for stuff. So most of these are kind of, me too, or what you'd expect in an enterprise level infrastructure. So we're very open in terms of what our technology offers. There's a great site for those that want to dig in really, really deep. It's Nitanix Bible. It's a blog by one of our VCDXs, Steve Poitras. We have quite a few VCDXs on staff, which have really helped build the product quite a bit. One of our VCDXs is actually even a sales guy, if you could believe that, Jason Langone. Definitely a company builder. He's pushed us to the next level, him and the federal team. That's kind of where we got our first big break, was in the federal space, federal government, which is kind of unique in the States, because they don't dive into new technologies usually. They'll let other people be the guinea pigs, but they're running 20-some thousand seats of Horizon View actually on Nitanix. So dynamic cluster, essentially as you add in a new node, it's literally 2 clicks. It'll recognize the node and then strike the data out there too. So the more nodes you have, the more resilient you are. That's essentially how it works. Wouldn't recommend to do this in the middle of the day, but you can upgrade your software. I'm just a creature of habit, play it safe. So you can update the software at any point. There's zero downtime, zero effect to the end user. DR, yeah, this is pretty standard stuff, right? So it's native DR, as you'd expect, again, in any organization. And then we just came out with Metro clustering in our recent release of the software. So this is something where we've had a lot of customers drive us to do this. So this is why we have the Metro clustering. It's kind of, we had to compete with the big boys there. We have to have the big boy toys to go along with it. So I want to build this out real quick and talk about where each one comes. All right. So when I started, we had only this unit, the 3000 series. And essentially this was the VDI box, and it still is today, the 3000 unit. Then we came out with the 1000. So this was more for the branch office, enterprise branch office, but it's also used for, I've seen it used in a small business space for VDI too, as you could scale it out, right? So if you grow in from a small business to a big one, just keep adding nodes. 7000, so our buddies at NVIDIA, who we're going to hear from soon here, we worked on with them from this is the one unique one. So these all have 4 nodes. This one only has 1 node, because you need room to plug in these K1, K2, and Apex, and we have all the different varieties in this too. It's a use case I've seen in the universities, School of Engineering. I was talking to you guys earlier about that. So essentially, they're able to repurpose these labs. It doesn't have to be an engineering lab anymore. It's just a lab. So real estate, very expensive, keep it going, able to charge more money to students and drive business over there. 6000, this is where when you bought a Nitanix box, hey, this is really cool, but it's very expensive when you have all this compute. So There's what I call Christmas decorations and what I call your car keys and phone, stuff you use every day. So before, we will not store your decorations that you use once a year, right? So it was just way too expensive. The 6000 series has helped us bridge that gap, and we actually have a 6035 model that I've seen used for things like ShareFile, where there's really very minimal compute that comes along with that unit, but you have to plug it into an existing cluster of Nitanix just to, in case you need some punch here and there, it'll borrow from the other nodes. And in the 8000 series, this is where we started to gain traction in workloads like SQL, Exchange. We have multi-million-dollar customers that are using this unit. This was developed by Michael Webster, one of our VCDXs. He wrote a book on virtualizing SQL, so he helped develop this unit to capture that workload for us. And in the 9000, the one I still kind of laugh about, the all-flash model. So for those guys that just need flash, well, we have that too. And this is Dell. So we chose to do an OEM with Dell. This is another proof point, like, hey, you can run it on any hardware. We chose Dell more for business reasons. I think being a private company, Dell, we're able to control a little more of what happens. So, we make the wine, and we want to make the bottle that the wine ships in so we can control the quality. So when you have a Nitanix Dell, it's actually like Dell powered by Nitanix. If you have an issue with that, Nitanix support is what's hit up first. So that was part of the agreement because, again, it's all about the experience that you guys have. So there's multiple flavors here, and you'll see new units coming out in the summer, and they're going to be more equivalent. Right now you get more density with our super micro boxes, but some people just need that brand name on the front, right? So these are all the different, obviously business apps, VDI we talked about, DR. These are different reasons why people purchase this. Branch Office has been very hot for a hub and spoke approach. The big data component, we see Splunk use case quite a bit actually, so that's been a pretty hot item for us. So that's where the 6000 would come into play, the Splunk piece. And that was my speed power through here to get us back on track. So.
But what I was just thinking, is Splunk not just about the memory? Is it actually about the hard disk access as well?
A lot of it is the storage. They store a ton of data. Like when you get a Splunk use case, it's just the gift that keeps giving because they just keep adding on nodes.
Right.
The way Splunk works, it's on a distributed system as well, so it coincides very nicely with our offering.
Right.
So, and Splunk has been a good business driver for people. It's I'm told it's kind of expensive, but the business value that it brings back, they're able to hit that up. Nordstrom is a big user of Splunk and on top of Nitanix there in the States. So the use cases we're seeing out here, from what I'm told, is more of a general server virtualization for China, and then VDI as well. So we're starting to see more and more VDI. Hong Kong, user-wise, we have users from 150. If it's below 150, Nitanix probably not a good fit for you. If it's below 150 seats, we're too big. You could use the branch office unit, but and then obviously it goes up to whatever. I'm told here, like in the thousands, if you're in the thousands, you're considered an enterprise customer in Hong Kong. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the folks at Citrix told me that. By the way, speaking of that, folks that want a user group here, just ask for my info, send me an email, and I'll put you in touch with the local folks here. They're getting like a virtualization user group, so it's a generalist. Kind of perfect timing now with Alex. So thanks for having us, Alex. I appreciate it.